Yo, what it do, brothers? You are now tuning in all that rah-rah with your Hebrew brother Milo Judah. What's going on, brothers? So, brothers, there seems to be a super fight on the horizon in the near future with one David, the Mexican monster Benavidez, and Artur Beterbiev. And this is a fight that I am looking forward to. Now, of course, they both have to handle business in their upcoming bouts. We know that Dmitry Bivol had just had back surgery not too long ago, so he is in recovery. But David Benavidez, he does have a fight coming up with Anthony Yarde, and that should be a pretty good fight. Now, what I would like to see from David Benavidez is that his power translates from 168 pounds to 175 pounds, because we saw in his previous two fights at 175 pounds with David Morrell and Alexander Jovic, I believe that was his name, if I remember correctly. Yes, he got the job done, but he didn't really get any stoppages. And I don't really remember David Morrell being hurt, but I do remember David Morrell hurting David Benavidez. I remember that quite vividly. Right now, David Benavidez, his ability to punch in combinations, and his defense is quite underrated, if you ask me. He has pretty good defense. He makes his opponent miss. He blocks and catches and shoots. He does a pretty good job with that. And, for brothers who knew who David Morrell was prior to his fight with David Benavidez, you knew that, Morrell, he had power. Now, I'm not saying that he has Artur Beterbiev power. Not saying that. But you knew that he had very great power in his punches. And to the extent that, like I stated, he did hurt David Benavidez. And it was a 50-50 fight. Even though David Morrell, you would say he's not that experienced in the professional world, he does have a very great amateur background. Right, so he did give David Benavidez a pretty good fight. And, of course, we know that Artur Beterbiev is coming off of a loss against Dmitry Bivol. Right now, when it comes to the matchup between David Benavidez and Artur Beterbiev, if you ask me who I would favor, I would have to go with the younger guy, David Benavidez, because he has power. He has good head movement. He has defense on top of his ability to punch in combinations. Right now, I'm not saying he can't lose. Of course, if Artur Beterbiev is his best self when he gets in that ring, he can beat anybody. But the fact that he is 41, you never know when that age is going to catch up with him, being 41 years old. And like they always say, it gets to a point where you can see the punches coming. You know exactly what you're supposed to do, but you just can't get out of the way. So you always have to, think about that factor of the game when it comes to boxing. And David Benavidez is a great boxer. His boxing ability and his ability to display the sweet science is underrated, because a lot of times people just want to see his power, right? But if you ask me, his last two fights showed his ability to box. So now I want to see him get a stoppage. And the fact that he has a fight coming up with Anthony Yarde does tend to get hit a lot, and he can be stopped. Artur Beterbiev stopped him. So I believe David Benavidez is capable of doing the same thing. Now, with that being said, we are going to read this article explaining why I stated that David Benavidez and Artur Beterbiev will be fighting in the near future. Okay, brother, so the article is by Boxing News 24, and the headline reads, Benavidez's trainer, Jose Sr., seals the deal for a Beterbiev fight after the separate November 22nd bouts. Right, and of course we have the image of Artur Beterbiev. Right, and it says, and of course it's by Dan Ambrose. It was written on August the 25th. And it says, trainer Jose Benavidez Sr. confirmed today that Artur Beterbiev will be the next opponent for the WBC light heavyweight champion David Benavidez, following their respective fights on the November 22nd card on DAZN at the AMB Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. right? And as I stated, just depending on how Artur Beterbiev looks, and I'm not talking about his skills. I'm strictly talking about his age and how that could possibly affect him against a David Benavidez. That could potentially go in David Benavidez's way. And like I said, if I was to choose who I would favor, and it's not a prediction, like I stated, I would have to see it. I would have to see Artur Beterbiev. But I know he is an extremely hard worker. He is going to come in shape. I do know that. But I mean, after you see a guy like Manny Pacquiao fight a David Barrios, and once Manny Pacquiao warmed up and got his legs under him, he was good competition for Mario Barrios. I think I said David Barrios, but I meant Mario Barrios, right? And, I expected Mario Barrios to win, but Mario Barrios was showing Manny Pacquiao extremely too much respect. And even though I am digressing, the point that I am making is that, the modern day medicine is looking as if it can extend pro boxing careers if a fighter is a great fighter. And I do believe Artur Beterbiev to be a great fighter, even though, some people may say Dmitry Bivol lost the first fight between the two. I tend to not see that. I believe that, Dmitry Bivol definitely won that fight. He fought him the same way that he fought him the second time. Now, in the first fight, he was hurt a few times, but, if you ask me, I believe that he fought the same way, and he controlled the pace of the fight for the most part. He fought the way that he wanted to fight. And, of course, he was going to take some licks. I mean, Artur Beterbiev, he's strong. He's going to get his shots off, and his shots are going to hurt. It is what it is. But, it is what it is. So it says, Jose Senior says there's a possibility that Beterbiev could be moved up to the main event to face Benavidez if his opponent, Anthony Yarde, suffers an injury in training camp. Now, I doubt that will happen, but you never know. You never know. So it says Beterbiev fight is accepted. We've already accepted a fight against Beterbiev. We've already said, yes, we're ready to go. And then hopefully in the next fight, we could fight Bivol. Those are the two fights that make sense right now, said trainer Jose Benavidez Sr. to Mill City Boxing about his son, David Benavidez, wanted to fight Artur Beterbiev next after his title defense against Anthony Yarde on November 22nd. So those are two great fights to try to have lined up for David Benavidez. And as I stated earlier, I would like to see his power translate to 175 pounds. I would like to see him drop a Dmitry Bivol or a Artur Beterbiev. Right now, like I stated, Anthony Yarde, he is there to be hit. So it wouldn't shock me if he was to stop Anthony Yarde or to drop Anthony Yarde. But at the same time, Anthony Yarde is a pretty good boxer. Don't get it twisted. So, it's boxing. Anything can happen if David Benavidez gets caught with the right blow. He can get hurt. And I've seen him get hurt against David Morrell. So anything is possible. Right. So it says Beterbiev, 21-1, is fighting Dion Nicholson in a light heavyweight contest on the undercard of Benavidez Yarde in Riyadh. Artur, 40, had hoped to fight IBF, WBA, and WBO 175-pound champion Dmitry Bivol in the trilogy match, but that match couldn't happen. Bivol had back surgery and is recovering. Right, and I did state that earlier. Dmitry Bivol, he did post on his social media that he had back surgery. But I did see another video of him training. Well, I wouldn't say training, but he was shadow boxing. And he didn't look as fast or as quick or as crisp as he usually does. But just the fact that he had back surgery and, he was able to shadow box shows that there is a decent amount of progression. Right? So it says Bivol announced his back surgery earlier this month on August 8th. Nicholson, 35, is a stay busy fight for Beterbiev to stay active because he hasn't fought since his 12-round majority decision to defeat Bivol on February 2nd in Riyadh. So it says the backup plan for Yarde. If Anthony Yarde gets injured, they'll step up Beterbiev to fight David on the November 22nd card, said Benavidez Sr. Fans on social media questioned why Benavidez chose to fight Yarde instead of Beterbiev on the November 22nd card. And honestly, like I stated, it's just certain things that you have to see from both fighters. How is Artur Beterbiev going to look after a loss? And, it's not like he got beat up or anything. I think he's going to be fine. But at the end of the day, you still have to see it. And with David Benavidez, you just want to see a signature performance from him. You want to see him hurt someone extremely bad and get a stoppage. Therefore, a fight against Artur Beterbiev would make sense. Right? So that's why you plan a fight down the line. Now, what I will say is with Turki Al-Sheikh and him announcing these type of fights, these type of mega fights before they are signed in black and white, it could be bad for business, especially if it doesn't happen. Right? Because fans are not so understanding of the fact that, paperwork may not be filled out correctly. All they are going to say is this fighter is ducking and that fighter is ducking. Right. So it says there's not a high amount of interest in Benavidez' Yard as the British fighter Yard was knocked out by Beterbiev in the 8th round on January 28th, 2023. Yes, he was knocked out. Artur Beterbiev was on that man's head. But as I stated, Anthony Yard is there to be hit. Right? So, he was boxing Artur Beterbiev pretty good, but, at the end of the day, he just, I don't know, man. It's just, I don't know. It's like he tries to block with his head or something. I don't know. So it says, we've been trying to chase him. He didn't want to take the fight with David, said Jose Sr. about why Benavidez isn't going straight to Bivol next. We offered him a fight, Turki Al-Sheikh in PBC, and he didn't want to take it. We can't make him fight. So the only one that stepped up and said yes was Beterbiev. So that's the one. Well, there is a rumor that David Benavidez dropped Dimitri Bivol with a jab in sparring. I don't know how true that is, but there is a rumor out there. And, Dimitri Bivol may not be so ecstatic or elated to take on a young and dangerous fighter like David Benavidez because he is young and dangerous and he does throw a lot of combinations. And like I stated earlier, if you ask me, his defense is quite underrated. He has very good defense, in my opinion. All right, so it's not shocking that Dimitri Bivol wouldn't want to take that fight right now. Right, so it says, I heard he had back surgery. Hopefully he recovers and gets well soon, and we get the opportunity to fight him. We are ready, said Benavidez Sr. about Bivol. Right, so that is the end of the article. So if you ask me, a fight between David Benavidez and Artur Beterbiev will be a great fight. You will need to have your popcorn ready because somebody's lights will get turned off in that fight. Now, what I will say is if it does come to someone getting knocked out, I think that Artur Beterbiev may be the one doing the knocking out. I think David Benavidez will have to outbox Artur Beterbiev and maybe get his stoppage later on in the fight if he can, accumulate his punches against an Artur Beterbiev. But Artur Beterbiev, the strength that he possesses and his punches, he can hurt anyone at any time. So, with that being said, brothers, there is a possibility that these two could fight if everything goes according to plan. And if that is the case, then I will be back covering the fight. I'm going to start to expand my channel. I do have a lot of interest. All right, I'm not just talking about so-called black men and so-called black women. All right, but I can understand how that could seem to be the case. But no, I do understand that brothers also have other interests. Brothers are interested in sports. Brothers damn near idolize sports, right? And I am interested in sports as well, right? I do attend a boxing gym owned by, former pro and world champion Nate Campbell. So, I'm not green to boxing. I understand the boxing game. And with that being said, brothers, that's all that real and real analysis. I'll see you brothers, or I'll holler at you brothers in the next video. Yo.